Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Thursday, it's 9 o'clock, so it can only be Coffee Kickstarter. And here, we, the Property Angels, bring you coal-faced reality from practitioners really walking the talk, actually doing what they say and having the substance behind them to deliver what they're talking about. But before we get started and start talking to the fabulous Richard Little, we'd first like to introduce ourselves. So Sam, would you like to go ahead?
Thanks, Karen. Hi there, my name is Sam Baddow. I've got a couple of businesses in property. One is a service accommodation business, the other one is a development company. So before that, I was 23 years as a police detective, so quite a different role to what I'm doing now. But 5 years ago, I left the police to pursue property full time. So I have experience in a variety of different property models, be that buy-to-lets, HMOs, rent-to-rent HMOs and serviced accommodation, commercial conversions, auctions, title splits, refurbs, all sorts of different things. And I've settled on what is my primary business is developing now. So that's a little bit about me. Do you want me to say a little bit about Sarah, who's the other part of our trio?
Indeed.
So we have Sarah Smith, who's one of the Property Angels. She's on maternity leave at the moment after giving birth to her daughter about 8 weeks ago. Sarah's probably been in property about 16 years, and she was pursuing property along with her career as a solicitor for quite a long time. Sarah streamlined her business so that it works well with her new life as a mum to Maisie, and she's got a portfolio of mainly single lets and HMOs that are managed on her behalf, just to make life really easy so that she can make the most of the time that she's got being a new mum. So that's a bit about Sarah.
Good morning, good morning. It's Thursday. Just let me turn that down so I can see the comments in the background. Brilliant. Thank you, Sam, and thanks for the great introductions. And for myself, most of you know I come from a corporate background where I originally started life as an accountant. Yeah, well, somebody has to. I escaped that working in project and program management and strategic business consultancy, but I exited that in May 2015 to create a property business, building sustainable wealth both for now and for the future. But now, the person you're all here to see today and listen to, the sage of development, the fabulous Mr. Richard Little. And we are absolutely delighted to have you here, Richard. So,
pleasure to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So let's talk a bit about you and how it all started and how your father started the development company that you ended up working in.
Yeah, I suppose I wasn't there obviously when he started it, but he started as a bricklayer, so he started on site and used to run trades, etc. And it just developed. I mean, it was this is back in the 50s. It worked differently than it does now. I mean, most developers, if you like, we didn't even call ourselves developers. We still don't, but they become house builders. So it was trades that became house builders, and so you know, weren't many other routes. We've got all sorts of people now that are in the development business, but not back then. So it was just something that happened, really. I'm not even sure as it was by design. It's just opportunities come up, buy a piece of land, build a couple of houses on it, and once you establish a bit of a track record, as much as it is now, that hasn't changed, is other people offer you land or other people offer you investment opportunities or whatever. So I think, you know, neither my dad or myself would profess to be particularly that smart or anything like that. We're just opportunists, I suppose. And when opportunities came, some worked out all right, some didn't. And you know, so yeah, he tried other things as well. You know, he was an entrepreneur of his day, a bit of a Dell boy, to be fair. He was always a trader, and he didn't mind what he traded, even when we were doing what people would say relatively sort of large developments and quite successful at it. He still used to take my mum and do a boot sale on a Sunday, selling stuff that we get from bankrupt from liquidators, you know. So not much has changed now. Still get stuff from liquidators, but it's different stuff now.
No, that sounds fabulous. So were you always interested in kind of, you know, building homes growing up?
I must have been, because I guess it just becomes it's part of your DNA almost. It's sort of, you know, I as a kid, I don't know at what age, but the sort of memories of, you know, trolling on building sites when you could, then you didn't have to sign in, and hard hats and all that sort of stuff, you know, and jumping on diggers and things like that. That was what little boys like, I suppose. You can't do that quite in the same way now. But I did. That wasn't my first call when I left school. I did want to become. I did apply to get an apprenticeship for carpentry, which would have added a string to the bow for the family business, because they were largely groundwork, brickwork, and all that sort of stuff. But we were in a recession at the time, so there were no apprenticeships at all. I ended up working in an office. I didn't want to work for the family firm, and I think a lot of you know, kids that come up, there are family businesses. There is that, you know, I'll go and find my own feet, thank you. But after 2 years, I decided, oh, that's probably safer there. I'll nip back there and take advantage of you know, be very fortunate that there are loads of advantages. But what I'd say to people now, if there's an advantage, take it. Don't push it away, because, you know, don't be too proud or too egotistical or whatever.
No, that's really, really solid advice. The thing is, most people aren't taught to be entrepreneurial and take those advantages. They're taught to follow a pattern, you know, take a job. Like Sam went into the police force. I worked in corporate land, Sarah, the solicitor. And it's fabulous when you can break out of that mold and actually follow your passion and do something you love, you know. And I know from talking to you over the years that I've known you, you love property, you love all the policy stuff, you love reading what's going on, the white papers, you know, and then summarizing them into plain English so that we can all understand them. That you know, even the latest changes, you know, the potential new development opportunities, you're there ahead of that, reading it so that you're right at the forefront, ready to grab opportunities as they come up, right?
Yeah, pretty much, I suppose. It's sort of, yeah, it's just, you know, whatever comes up, it's my take on it, or our take. It's not my own, just my own view. But you've got to be, any business you're in, you know, any sector you're in, whether it's the police or whether it's accountancy or whatever, if you keep on top of what's going on, you've got more chance of getting ahead. If you just follow everybody else, and that's, I say, I don't know any other sector, but in our sector, if planning is the biggest part of our sector, you know, all right, land acquisition, doing the deals, yeah, that is part of it. But the planning is where we add the value, get it right, get it wrong, whatever. And if you don't understand it, and it doesn't really take that much to understand it, and there's always people out there that will explain things if you're not quite sure, certainly in the modern world of like this sort of stuff, and, you know, different platforms and different information. But of course, the danger is that it is opinion. It's how, you know, I mean, the new legislation, etc., you know, as Sam will know with a sort of, you know, legal police background, etc., you know, it's not as black and white as people think it is it? You know, so it's a subject to interpretation and opinion. So we got something on at the moment. I've got 2 planning consultants with completely opposite views of the same thing, like completely opposite. You couldn't have any different. And which one's right or which one's wrong? They ain't going to make the decision. We've got to make the decision, you know, and they both could be wrong. That's the thing.
Take the advice from both of them and you know, then determine it yourself so you can figure out the optimal situation. Brilliant. So Richard, rolling back a little bit. So when you left school, did you go straight into your father's construction business? Is that what you started out doing, or did you go to college for a little while? How did it all start? No,
I wasn't a college candidate. No, I was probably bright enough. I didn't pay enough attention. I think the reports say could try harder or shouldn't talk as much or something. You'll get that, Karen, won't you?
I did.
Sure, yeah.
Too much. Bad girl.
So yeah, and I think I said we're in a recession in sort of 74, 74. And I left school, and so things weren't great. I went and worked in an office. So I went 14 quid a week in an office, which was, you know, I definitely weren't going to go and earn £20 working for my dad, because that'd be stupid, wouldn't it? I'll go and earn £14 and work in an office. Yeah. Didn't want to be told what to do by my dad.
Fair enough. I know you ended up as a bricklayer. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I lasted a couple of years before I sort of went into the family business. I'd I made the radical decision to join the Navy. And I maintain to this day I would have done, except for they were asking me to wait. I think it was 8 or 9 months before I could. I did all the stuff that you have to do, and everything got accepted. And it's 8 or 9 months before I would get. I was going to Ganges in Ipswich for the training, and that was so long. When you're 17, that's just 8 months. That's another. Anybody 8 months older means ancient. That's just crazy. So. I sort of drifted into a couple of other bits, and then started working with Dad. And as I've done as well, if you come to the family firm, you start at the bottom, you do labouring, and you learn stuff from the bottom. And I still maintain that it's good to see all aspects of any sector, any business, and so. I think then what really happened was we had when I was there. When I started, it wasn't long. There was, you ladies won't remember, but a lot of the British trades were working in Germany because there's a massive infrastructure spend in Germany in the 70s, and they were all going over there earning £200 a week, and so there was a shortage in the UK, which meant that everybody back here was also earning £200 a week, ironically, because there was a shortage, and we had a shortage of bricklayers, so. Dad, being a bit of an opportunist, said, "Oh, pick the trowel up, run the line." So you just, they did. So I jump in the middle, and so I learned it that way. I didn't go to college or anything like that. It took too long. So then it just evolves, and then all of a sudden you were a labourer, but now you're a bricklayer. So I'm an unqualified bricklayer, but earned a lot of money at it.
You did very well. We've talked about some of your projects. And actually, on that note, the Navy thing was picked up by the next generation anyhow. So that was kind of lived out, I guess.
Yeah,
and later on, you did go to university.
I did. Yeah, that was hiding out from a recession. I thought, what can I do? There's not much going on. We just lost a property, so we had a high court. I had a high court judgment against my name at the time. And I thought, well, what can I do? There's not much going on. This is in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. So I thought, I'll go and see if I'm as smart as I think I am. And at that time, you could get a grant, so it made sense. And I've got a young family as well. And we got loads of money for doing it. But I still worked through it. We did a bit of where I lodged for one of the years. We built an extension. I've got get a gang of the guys together from uni and all got paid cash. I shouldn't say that, should I? It's back a long time. So we worked as well, because if you're a worker, I think. But yeah, so yeah, the whole university thing was just a convenience. Has it done me any good? Nah.
But at the time, you became qualified under RICS, right?
Briefly.
But it gave you good substance at the time. And do you think it encouraged perhaps your research side of things, where you started investigating more the white papers and things like that?
Yeah, to be fair, yeah, I've been a bit flippant before. Actually, yes, I think it probably did, because I decided to go and say prove how smart I was, but I actually really wanted to do economics. But I'd already decided that that'd be hard work because I didn't know much about that. Whereas if I did building surveying, well, that's fairly easy because I already know some of it. So I took the easy option. But no, I think you're probably right. It added to a discipline possibly, although there ain't much discipline at university, not the one I went to anyway. It was I was a mature student. And they encouraged mature students at the time through, I don't know, an Access program or something. I can't remember what it was called. And one of the aims was to bring maturity to the class. I don't think I was there more than a week, and we're all chucking paper pellets at each other, the 18-year-olds and the 38-year-olds or whatever, or 35-year-olds or whatever old I was. It's like, yeah. So there wasn't no the leveling went downwards.
No, that's brilliant, and I guess it's where you got your flavour for the Homer Hoyt land economy and all of that stuff. Which
That's an ongoing thing, isn't it, Karen?
I know.
Most other people don't even really get it, but yeah, and I don't read as much about it now as I used to, because I'm getting old and I forget what I read. I'll listen a little bit more now, podcasts and things. But yeah, it's everything that we do, in my view, in our sector is based in the past, you know, and we use the past to forecast what's going to happen, whether it's changes to planning. You know, I'm no genius, but we know what changes are likely to happen, the next lot of changes before this lot's implemented, because we know where the weaknesses are and we know but we don't know what the result will be. But a lot of that comes from, I think you're right. It comes from the sort of the thirst for information that is somewhat lowered now.
Cool. So what lots of people are going to want to be hearing about now is your development journey, because, you know, there are some people out there who tell you property's easy, right? You're going to be a millionaire in 6 months. Of course you are. And you're going to have this massive portfolio, and anyone can do development. But really, let's talk about the truth now, you know. So when you started out, you've had the highs, the lows, and we've talked about some of these offline. Okay. But typically, once you'd got some experience and you understood what was going on from when you started out, can we talk about the reality of development? How, I know you work for major developers, the likes of Barratt you've worked for as a consultant contractor kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And but when you started doing it and you were responsible for the whole thing, can we talk about the real reality, the long time it actually takes to secure planning sometimes on land? You know, people think they're going to get planning like that and happy days, they're going to have $100 grand in their pocket 5 minutes later, but that's not how it is, you know? I mean, maybe we can talk about the church and how that came about, and, you know, some of the highs, the lows, the planning appeals, or is there a site where we could kind of like talk about the challenges, the ups and downs along the way? And yes, it came out well, but a lot of that was because of the substance and the team you had around you and how you knew to rip apart and deal with the bottlenecks.
Yeah, well, we certainly talk about the church. That's actually on site now after many, many years. But I just had a project meeting before this. It isn't, and I say, obviously you and I have discussed this at length, and anybody that's sort of heard me talk or whatever, I've toned down my realism now, because I realised myself the realism was that people don't want it, and even people that will watch this. You know, it's much better to live the dream, if you like, and stuff. But the reality, my own experience of the reality, is very, very few people make money out of development. Very few people, including people that have been doing it a long time. They don't make the amounts of money either, you know. And I guess the big thing for many people is they don't understand the emotional cost, if you like, not just the financial cost, the sleepless nights, you know, the stress and all that sort of stuff, and relationship issues and health issues and stuff like that. Because as you've said, Karen, you know, projects take a long time. The quicker a project takes, generally it's a bit weird, I suppose, when I say this, it's more likely not to pan out very well. You know, so the quicker somebody finds a project, you know, or whatever project they're looking for, I'm talking about multi-unit developments now, not necessarily some of the smaller stuff. Then the quicker they find it, and the quicker they get into it, the more chance it's not going to work out, because they won't have looked at it as close as they probably need to. However, people make a lot of money out of development. And I talk to old fogies like myself that have been around a long time, and when we're being honest and away from cameras and stuff like that, is the only time we really make any money is when the market goes up, because none of us are that smart that we buy cheap enough. We pretty much all pay a little bit more than we should pay. But you know, so when the market goes up, we're brilliant, aren't we? But when the market is a little unsteady, or even when it's stable, we lose money. You know, I am being generalizing. There'll be lots of people that say, "No, I don't. I make money." But we talk to, and I get involved with quite a lot of people, and the reality of it is, very few of even the outwardly successful projects make anything like the amount of money that people would like to think, you know, like others to think that they do make it. So it's a business like any other sector that there's its successes, and then there's the the majority, which are sort of, yeah, might be okay, might not be okay, and then there's the disasters. But the real successes are few and far between, in my own experience, or I'm just no good at it, maybe, I don't know.
No, to be honest, I know, and obviously we've spoken a lot offline, I know you've been involved in helping people who are in dire straits, some big names, I'm not going to mention any of them, but where they've set, you know, the view publicly, this is what we're doing, and you've had to go in and try and help them and bring with you the consultancy knowledge to actually restructure their project and see what can be salvaged, what can be saved. And I know also you've obviously worked with certain banks where projects have just fallen over and step-in clauses have had to be called up, and you've needed to come in to take over the project to see what can be done, whether it can be sold on an auction, whether by changing the scheme and going back in planning, there's an alternative approach to make that project profitable again. So I know you've been involved in kind of like a whole plethora of that type of thing, you know, throughout.
I get a lot of rubbish on my desk. I get a lot of problems on my desk, is what you're saying. Yeah, I seem to attract those.
Problem solver, and you're people's savior in many ways, because they come to you often too late, because it's better to shout out early when there's a problem, but they come to you early looking for help, for guidance, for ways to at least come out not losing money. And that's got to be the worst position you should ever be in, not losing money, not in a position where you're losing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, which many do.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is true. I do think I do attract a disproportionate amount of that sort of stuff, probably because of what I put out. I think one thing you said, which is absolutely right, it is generally too late. By the time people own up, and I will say, and I don't want to make this a sexist type thing, but men just don't come. They just don't come with their problems. They don't, you know, pretty much every project that we've got on our desk that we would say is distressed. No, I won't say every single project we've got on our desk at the moment that's distressed has got an egotistical male developer at the top. Now, some of those aren't come from the developer, they're coming elsewhere, but there is an egotistical developer, in one case an egotistical lender, but that's another story. So I think with what I've seen with more ladies coming to the space, if you like, we're getting a much better balance in terms of looking at stuff, and I think, again, I might be a bit generalistic here, but when we've had female clients or female whatever come to us with an issue, they come a lot earlier, you know, so it's actually, it doesn't mean to say you can sort it out, but you got more of a stab at it. Generally, when the guys come, it's too late. We're then dealing with a bank or the investor or whoever else, because, you know, the guys already, we've got two on the desk at the moment. The guys are gone. They know that, we've told them that, and they know that, but they're still, well, one of them still strutting around, driving around in whatever Range Rover or whatever, playing the big I am on bounce back loan money, probably, to be fair. But you know, and it's such a shame, because we have seen a massive amount of people come into the sector, and a lot like yourselves from investors moving into development, and there are some success stories. But there's an awful lot more horror stories than there are success stories. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I suppose in some ways, those horror stories don't really get shared for all sorts of reasons, understandably. And the success stories that do get shared, that they're invariably not quite what they seem either. So I'm all right, misery, aren't I?
No, but actually, we'll go on to the positive stuff in a minute. But I wanted to set the scene.
5 minutes at the end, positive. Yeah.
I think it's so important. I mean, you know, I've had some challenges, but I'm pretty dogmatic. And I actually, obviously, was lucky enough to have your support as well. And I learned a lot from you. And I may not have leveraged everything immediately, but it's still there. And I use it now with some of the stuff we're doing. And it's really stood me in good stead. I think the point is, property development isn't easy, despite what some of the trainers say. And people overestimate their knowledge and the people, or they underestimate, I should say, sorry, that their knowledge and the people they need around them. It can be fairly smooth if you've got the right people around you and you invest in the business stuff up front to understand what it is that you're actually buying and what skills you need around you, and if you mitigate the risks up front. However, by just jumping in and following some of the so-called gurus out there, you're setting yourself up for trouble unless you're incredibly lucky. I mean, you know, that's the horrible side. But let's start with some positive stuff now, because you've done some fabulous projects, and I mean, I've seen some of the stuff you've done. It's great. You've got a beautiful project you're partnering with Strawberry on.
That's yeah, it's nearly finished, that one. Yeah.
So could we talk about that one? And
yeah, I can do. Yeah, that's a partnership with the landowner who then became the developer. So most of the stuff we do is some sort of collaboration with the landowners, and because that's where we often do these circles here about win-win and all that sort of stuff, which is, you know, a bit twee, I suppose. But if you are looking for a genuine result for the main stakeholders in the deal, then you've got much more chance of getting a decent deal. So that one was that already owned the land, which is great. Also, as they owned the land, they also wanted to give back to the local community. So there's 10 houses. There's 3 houses on the site that are voluntary affordable. From the planning perspective, we could have pushed that we didn't get any. But they so they come from the area, or one of them comes from the area, and they have this genuine desire to give back. But of course, the local community don't really get that, or the noisy people in the local community. So there was a lot of objection, and that's one thing that is quite common with many developments, is the amount of objections that you get, and it can get very personal. So we sort of said about people losing sleep and the emotional stuff. We get used to it. I can stand in front of a public meeting. I don't care what they say, because I've heard it before. I've met every single one of them before, or their type. And I'll come back to Sam there. I guess in your previous sort of career, Sam, you might meet a new criminal, but you'd seen them before, haven't you? It's like, very much the same traits and stuff like that.
Yeah, a bit of resilience around you, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but for somebody new, coming into development, they're going to stand in front of all this, get this abuse, and we have collectively we had a death threat on one. Bryn took that a bit bad. Bryn's my son, those that you don't know. He took that a bit personal, and I thought it was quite funny, but maybe it wasn't. But people get very emotive about it, about developments in the NIMBYism and all that sort of stuff. And so the project that we're talking about, the 10 units, the local guy that drives around in his Rolls Royce and he's the chairman of the parish and all that sort of stuff. It's just a bit of sport for him, and a lot of this is in councils and stuff like that. There's some very well-meaning people in the parish councils, town councils, etc. But there's also some complete, horrible people that are just there just because they've got nothing else to do. And unfortunately, I am now entering that generation of the miserable old people that are retired, that have got nothing better to do than object. And I'll it's not a rant, but I'll have a slight thing at the minute. Is we often hear about the problems in development, and it's about the planners and the planning system and all that. My own review is it's third parties that are the biggest problem to planning applications, because we now curtail to them, and anybody can come out and say whatever they like. One of the other projects, we spent best part of $100,000 on an inquiry, planning appeal and inquiry, and it was purely down to the locals objecting because the planners were all for it. And that is a complete, ironically, that £100,000 basically meant that they got £100,000 less contribution for affordable housing. That's the reality of it. It's not me being a greedy developer. It's the well-meaning busybodies that have got nothing better to do. And often, to polarize people, they're old academics that have done bugger all in there. They've done not very much in their life, but they've got all the theory. Nice people in isolation, but when you get a whole gaggle of them together, it's like, and I've dealt with them for decades, and and they're getting worse. So sorry, rant over. Sorry.
No, that's actually, and Fiona's just said, it's people aren't really, and I know this is something that's quite dear to your heart because we've had this conversation, the only that people aren't prepared to pay for the right advisors from time to time. Now, I know tapping into your knowledge and expecting freebies when in actual fact they're getting thousands of pounds worth of knowledge. And when the cards are turned and they might have a service they can provide to you, they expect payment.
Oh yeah, we meet them still on not a daily basis anymore, but people, they're so transparent as well. You know, I mean, we've done a bit of touting for consultancy work and various bits with the network that we've got, and we've had all sorts of people. We've done a little bit, and in the end, we thought it's just not worth it, because, you know, with the greatest respect, they might be paying me £250 an hour, but ultimately, you know, they're not really listening to what I'm saying anyway. But most people, they won't pay. You know, I got somebody recently asked me for a couple of books that would be useful, you know, and I sent him 2, you know, reasonably sort of detailed development books, so more academic books. And he said, oh, that's more normally what I'll pay. Normally, I wouldn't pay that much for a book because they're like 30, 35 quid each. Do I think it's worth it? Don't ask me the question to send you, you know, what he wants is me to send him a couple of books that are easy to read and buy for £7.99. You know, most of the books that you buy at £7.99, including our own, you know, they're only going to have so much information in. If you really want to learn about something, whether it's accountancy, criminology, or whatever, you've got to read a proper book, haven't you? You know, so yeah, and people won't pay.
No, or you've got to pay somebody who has read those books and has walked in those shoes to summarize the key points to you. But that, you know, that's a price too. And people don't understand that. No, I can really resonate with that. Now, on that note, let's talk about land, because that's something you're doing a lot of now, land. Now, there's lots of landowners out there with expectations of the value of their land right up here, even in the current market. Part of that is because they've been misinformed by friends, by agents, by, dare I say, the newbies out there acting as promoters who really don't understand what they're doing. They're running around with a promotion agreement, offering prices over and above the reality because they haven't done an appraisal. They don't understand the best case, worst case, factoring in the profit. And I know something you talk about is getting that land at the right price at the start is one of the key points where you make the profit.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. So
how should they do it right? What are your recommendations on how to start out as a land promoter?
Well, first of all, if you're going to be a land promoter, you either got to have some deep pockets and or a very sound knowledge of planning. Because so for those that don't know, promoting land is where you work with the landowner and get permission, hopefully get permission for development on their land. It could be residential, commercial, industrial, whatever. And you share a percentage of the uplift in value. So typically that could be anywhere between 10, 30, 35% of the uplift, but you are risking the money. So there's quite a lot. So you're quite right. We've seen a lot of people do land promotions and options as well, where they've just agreed too high. They've set that expectation too high. And there's less doing the promotion because they'll get found out generally through the legal process, you know, by the landowners, you know, solicitors or their advisors in some form or other. Because even when you approach a landowner direct, there's very few of those deals that will go through without involvement of a land agent or a commercial agent or a valuer in order to get the contracts sorted. You know, I wouldn't say there aren't any, you know, but mostly you have involvement of professionals. And sometimes, as you've alluded to there, the professionals come in, start raising the flipping values again, you know, because, professionals have got no flipping idea because they're only interested in their fee. And again, I'm generalizing, but most of them, they just work to a set format. This is the valuation. This is how we work it out. And that's what it is. You know, it doesn't, you know, just because the RICS have set out different ways of doing things for years, don't make it right, guys. You know, because invariably it isn't. The land values always come out too high. So much of our work, if you like, behind the doors work is the negotiation and the games you have to play and blowing smoke up people's bums for their ego in terms of you know, and paying them for their privilege. You're paying their fees nearly all the time. If you're a promoter, you're paying all the cost of the other side, etc. You have to manage those people, you know, and the way to start promotion, if you're looking at promotion, you really need to be working very closely with a planning consultant. Otherwise, you're going to be signing deals that just and never got any chance of planning. So it's understanding the risk. So typically with a promotion deal, depending on what size they are, so we don't really look at promotions now for much less than we've just secured. Oh, actually, no, we're buying that. So we've just got 2.5 acres, but we're actually buying that. So the smallest promotion deal we've probably got that we've agreed to is 5 acres. So on that 5 acres, we will expect to pay anywhere from 80 grand to 200 grand to get planning on that. So, and that's all a gamble. You know, it's a calculated risk, if you like, but it's so no newbie, if you like, if that's the expression, should really get involved with promotion unless they're working very, very closely with another land promoter, for instance. So we've got a couple where we share the land promotion. So we bring the expertise to the table and share the costs, but then we share the rewards as well. Or, as I say, work very closely with a planning consultant who's going to be, you know, integral part of the team. But I think more dangerous than options or land or promotion agreements is when they simply go out and buy something, you know, whether it's subject to planning, got planning, or anything like that. That's where more people come unstuck. They agree too high a price originally. I think, as you and I know, Karen, and I'm sure Sam does, you know, knows the hardest thing to say, but it's the thing we should say most frequently. We should walk away from pretty much everything we look at because somewhere in there it don't work. You know,
get to the no quickly. No, you're right, and definitely want to tease that out a bit more. But firstly, with promotion as you've described, you're working on the same side as the landowner, and obviously dealing with the planning side for a share of the profit. With the option, you have the right but not the obligation to buy it. However, you can still misset expectations, and you could spend a shed load of money trying to get schemes on it that aren't viable because of the location of the land. You know, but yes, now let's get back to the other option that you said, which is where people go out and buy land without a clue. Let's say a piece of land in an area of outstanding national beauty, outside the settlement boundary. They haven't even thought about the fact that the services are going to be so expensive to bring to site. So let's talk about that option now, Richard.
No, if people are buying land outside settlement boundaries unconditionally, then they're nuts. End of. You know, regardless of whether it's a natural beauty or whatever it is, you know, if they're buying it unconditionally. That said, we're just buying a piece unconditionally, but we've got a bit of an idea, and we're paying not very much, buying 2.5 acres. It's outside the settlement boundary. We will not get planning right now. However, there is an excellent chance of getting planning, so we're quite happy to buy it. There you go. You know, and the guys need money. We're giving them some money, but we've cut them in on the back end. So when we get planning, they'll get some more. You know, so
and that's the difference. So you've done that, but it's a calculated risk. You're land banking it, but you know what else is going in the local plan. So can you explain to people who don't know what the local plan is and what it talks about?
Yeah, so local plan called different things in different areas. So it basically sets out the development plan of a region, so of a borough or of a planning authority, a local authority, a council, if you like, over a period of potentially 15 years, something like that. They're often out of date. And there's often new plans coming up. So there's new plans in discussion or whatever. So whilst the plan is there, it's good for a few years. And it sets out pretty much what the development expectation and opportunity is in a given area. But like anything else, it's not set in stone, and everything in there. So we have something called allocated sites. So where the local authority have identified sites that are suitable for development, say for housing. That doesn't mean to say you can deliver on those sites, because some local authorities don't look in it too deep. It might be impossible because of the sheer cost of cleaning up the previous use, for instance, so what we call a brownfield site, or it just might not be available for sale. We looked at a site with some people in north of Birmingham, and the local plan had allocated it for like 20 odd houses, and there was a room for about 4. But at that time, the local authority were allocating it because there's something called a 5-year housing supply. They had to come up with a number to say that they got a 5-year housing supply. But when we look at all of that sort of stuff, we know that even if they have got a 5-year housing supply, if we can prove that some of those sites are not deliverable, then we disprove their 5-year housing supply. So we can then go in those areas and get consent in outside settlement boundaries, if you like. But other people just buying it willy-nilly, we had a guy that we're trying to do a deal with. He paid £100,000 an acre for a piece of land opposite his house. And agriculturally, it's worth probably 6, 7, 8, maybe £10,000. And he will get planning consent. He is likely to get planning consent, but he's already valued his land because he's brought it, and he brought it years ago. So quite a smart move in a sense, but he overpaid for it. So his expectation now is £1 million an acre, and we just said we can't deliver it. It's just very few places can you get to that level anymore. You used to be able to, but not anymore. So he brought that land unconditionally, overpaid for it. There's plenty of people that do it, and maybe one day he or his the next generation, probably, I think he's got kids, they'll probably benefit from it. But so all sorts of people will buy land, not just developers, but with an idea of an investment or something. But people generally, if they're buying it to develop it, something you touched on earlier, people underestimate how long it takes as well. The church that we mentioned previously, I don't know, we've been talking about that for 5-6 years. It'll be 8 years from acquisition, from actual acquisition to delivery. And that's subject to it going well over the next 14, 15 months.
And we're in unprecedented times. No, it's really good to set the flavor. I mean, development can be rewarding, and sometimes people are lucky with those plots of land. They've had that smothering of luck. They did overpay, but stuff's changed, stuff's happened, the demand's changed, all the appetites change locally. So they do actually make some money. But it's far better to actually understand what you're doing and do it, knowing the risk, knowing that actually the reality is it's never going to work, or highly unlikely, or in 5-10 years it probably will work, but you're going to land bank it. But you've de-risked it because you've actually done that with the knowledge up front on what you're doing. So no, that makes perfect sense. On market land, some people think that's great, but it needs to have been on market for a long time, do you not think, to actually start looking like a bargain, generally speaking?
Yeah, generally that's the case. It is changing because of I think you said unprecedented times. It is changing, despite what's going on in the media and the economy and all that sort of stuff and people's ideas. There are already, and will be even more over the next year, 2 years, many businesses, many people struggling, and will be not just motivated to sell, but need to sell. So we have done, this is for the first time, we've done 2 deals through an agent, and we've never, I think, Karen, you'll know that we've never done deals from an agent before. In fact, we've got 3 deals at the moment, agents, because now they are becoming useful. As long as they know you're credible with them and you can deliver, then they will give you. We only get the problematic stuff chucked at us, but that's okay because we punch above our weight in terms of the development stuff that we look at. We secured 20 acres a couple of 3 months ago. I mean, 20 acres, we would have never looked at 20 acres because it's just too much. That's the big boy stuff, and so, but we get some credibility on delivering. It's a slightly more problematic site. And the only reason we got it is it was offered to others. But at the time, people were worried about Brexit. This is pre-COVID. They were worried about Brexit and all that sort of stuff. So there were spending caps put on the acquisitions teams of the bigger developers. So we slipped in. The guys needed to do a deal because they wanted to get the deal, get it off their desk, and everybody else had stopped spending, stopped committing. You know,
Yeah.
so you know, it again comes back to being an opportunist, being in the right place. So yeah, for the first time in my whole life, for the last few months, I've been saying now, agency will be worthwhile now. We've got another decent guy locally who Bryn's working with. We haven't found anything yet. We've looked at a few things with him, but we will, because he's looking for us. You know, and you know, again, we'll only get the more problematic. But hey, if it was easy, they'll give it to somebody else who will overpay.
Exactly.
So, you know,
and you're able to kind of like come up with something different because of the skills you've got within your family and, you know, very close circle to probably, if it's viable, find that solution, which does make a big difference.
we're extremely fortunate where we are. We've got a bit of credibility. We've got quite a large, widespread skill set without going out, without it still costs us money, in-house money. But yeah, we are very fortunate. And I think that's one of the things I sort of say to a lot of people is don't look at what we do and think that you're going to replicate it unless you've got the same advantages as we've got. If you haven't, it's going to cost you more money. And as soon as you engage people that aren't truly brought into your project, they're just there for the money. Now, we don't mind that because we have loads of people that are involved that are just there for the money, and they don't have to believe in what we're doing or anything like that. They're just there providing a service. But if you're completely reliant on people like that, then other than yourself, who is looking after this project for you? You know, and I've seen too much trust put in people that may have a track record, maybe, you know, doing something or other, but they still don't buy into your project like you do because they're not as invested as you are. And that's something that you talked about earlier, you know, about being either an entrepreneur or a developer or whatever, is what's it like? Well, it's like having you shouldering the burden of the whole thing. It's there on your shoulders. It's with you 24 hours a day. If you are doing a job and you can go home and stop it, whatever that job, you know, that's great. But for the rest of us, it's with us all the time. It doesn't go away, you know, and that's a big difference. And lots of people that just don't work for because they don't realize what burden it can be. Yes, absolutely. You know, it's very nice to think about, oh, we'll buy a piece of land, or we'll buy a building and we'll convert it and we'll do this and we'll do that. And even though some realistic expectation of amount of work, people still don't get until they've gone through that first one and the problems. They don't get what it's like, you know. So it's certainly not rosy. I mean, we've all had experiences, bad experiences in property, but we're still here and we learned from them, haven't we? It has made us stronger. But for the majority of people, I'm afraid it won't make them stronger. It just wipes them out.
No,
You know?
and I know you're passionate about what you do. I'm going to hand over to Sam in 2 secs. But I know even though you're talking negatively, you're giving the reality, and that's what's so important. People understanding what they're getting into and being prepared to put up with that and push forward because they're passionate about what they do. And I can see Sam chomping at the bit to get going. I'm going to let her start questioning.
Richard, I was wondering, is it only land and new build you do, or do you do conversion as well in the business?
Our preference is land and new build, but yes, of course, if the deal's good, excuse me, we will look at a conversion. Karen talked about a church project that we're involved with, which is that's going to be 8 years by the time. That's a conversion project. It's not gone well. It's gone better for some than it has for others, but you know, it's that's conversion. But I generally steer clear from listed buildings, don't I, Karen, and conversion projects. Not because I don't love them, you know. I've had the heartache, the headaches, and the financial pounding that I get from those. So they have bad memories for me. I know some people that do both conversions and listed conversions and stuff like that, and they do it very, very well. Fair play to them. Not my bag. Nice little boxes that, you know, look okay and all that. That's my thing, you know.
So if it was a conversion that wasn't listed and didn't have all those extra problems, would you would still do those then? You're just more favouring on a new build?
Absolutely, yeah. We go out looking for new build, but when you're looking for one thing, other stuff comes. And earlier this year we decided we got enough money out in promotions, we wouldn't do any more promotions. And as soon as you sort of think in-house, say we're not doing anymore, opportunity comes up for a couple, and you sort of, well, okay. In fact, the 20 acres that came, and that's our biggest piece at the moment. That came, and that is a promotion with a preemption to purchase. We intend to purchase it as well. So we don't just promote land, but and we've got one that's should just about either be this week or next week it will complete, where that is either part conversion or demolish and new build and a load of land with it. So yeah, we're looking, if it comes with a territory or it's a good deal, hey, we've looked at projects with Karen in the past, and so they don't have to be big projects either. I talk about 20 acres, which is effectively a couple of hundred houses, that will, should we get permission and should we go on to purchase it, that's 10-year pipeline just on that site for 6 years to build out and all the other stuff that goes with it. But smaller projects, I know Brent often talks about, I don't know, he talks about pebbles and boulders or something or other. The boulders, the big bit of land, and because the smaller ones tend to go quicker. And actually, so I mean, we've got one at the moment. It's 3 to 5 houses in Croydon, and we're considering doing that one. It's 3 to 5 houses. Well, why would we do that if we're doing 100 house unit, 100 house sites and all that? It's because it is that. It's actually, it's quite interesting. So we don't have to take everything on purely because it's the most money. Sometimes it's about the people that are involved, and it is. We're fortunate enough to be able to do that. And the projects are interesting, which is listed stuff's interesting, but it's still not interesting enough to make me do any of it.
You mentioned about the problematic developments at the moment table, and men seem to be the problem. It's more often a man than a woman coming to you. Do you think we've just got different risk appetites, and that's why that is male and female, different risk appetites?
No, I know males and females across the spectrum. So no, I don't think it's that. I don't really know what it is, because we know that everybody's different, not just male and female, the way that they think. But I do genuinely think that men are keep it to me. They don't want to appear vulnerable. And which is a shame. I've on a more of a spiritual and personal and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I've got involved in men's group and that, and it's like, wow, okay, that's that. You then see the benefit that perhaps some of you ladies tend to see, by being more together than we are. And it's not about sharing stuff necessarily, because it doesn't mean to say ladies share stuff, does it? I think the perception is that you share more than the men, but no, the men, I can think of so many cases. I just say it's ego. It is. I don't want to be seen to be a failure. I'm the hunter-gatherer or whatever, and it's like, it's my responsibility to fix everything. I get that as a father, and we've got loads of kids and grandkids and stuff like that, and you feel responsible for all of them. And when they've got a problem, you do. But I'm sure mothers and anybody feels that as well. It's like, you want to fix the world's problems. Yeah.
For somebody who's listening to us, and we've been talking about the risks and the setbacks and that sort of thing, but they still want to get involved in development, what would you recommend being the sort of first steps of moving into that?
So on the basis we can't talk them out of it, let's assume that they have got the resilience that you can't, and Karen will attest to the fact that one of my biggest things is I try and talk people out of it, because it isn't for most people. But yeah, it's get a bit of knowledge before you sort of jump into things, and yeah, maybe in the modern day of social media and that, look at some of the platforms and the groups, but most of them have got an agenda. So just be, if you're smart enough, don't believe everything you read, because most of it's slanted in some form or other. It's flavored perhaps. But yeah, there are some decent people out there, but there are also some very noisy, opinionated people, which you see on social media. But just because they're out there all the time doesn't mean to say they are speaking the truth, even if they put it in capitals. You know, it doesn't mean to say it's just their opinion. So for me, it's actually, if you can touch base with you know, somebody that's doing it and that's done it, that's ahead of the, what we call it, the journey, ahead of you in the journey. They don't have to have done it for 20 years. They could have done it for 2. As long as you're not paying them for mentorship, you know, then if they're prepared to share with you some of their issues, and the easiest way for anybody there is invest with them, you know, and if you haven't got any cash, then invest some time with them if they're willing to do that, you know, which is, you know, there aren't that many, to be fair, that probably want to do that. There's plenty that will let you come in if you want to pay them a fee. There are, you know, I think now one thing that COVID's given us is, in terms of the education sector, it's obviously pushed pretty much everything online. So the online stuff, it should be a bit cheaper because it's easier to deliver. So some of the courses, you know, and it's not just the cost of it, it's you're not in the room, so you're not subject to some of the sales techniques. You know, you can walk away from them because you can just put your computer down or switch it off. But there are some reasonably priced, I think, you know, basic education stuffs out there. It's, you know, it's always just be wary about, mentorships and things like that, because I think it's easy to sell ourselves. I've spent more on property education, or did do, or Bryn and I have. You know, I think we were over 100,000 at one point. You know, and it's just like, okay, you know, some of it was okay, but we'll always look to get a nugget out of it, won't we? Because if we paid 500 quid for something, we're going to find something positive. Otherwise, we'll feel stupid, you know. But there is some, there is some information, real basic information. We got we got a little book, a tiny little book that's really basic. And if you can't find, if that doesn't put you off, we've also got, I'm not promoting or selling anything, but we've got 100 videos on our, I think it's on a Facebook group, House Building Business Community, but it's also now gravitating towards HBTV, House Building TV. That, I don't know what that is. It's something that somebody's doing, and they're all going on there. So that is pretty much, me or Bryn waffling, or both of us waffling on for anything between 10 minutes and 40 minutes about all aspects. That's all free. You know, and I take on, and I'm fairly certain Karen or Fiona or somebody said this to me at some point, if it's free, people don't value it, and that is the problem. So, you know, those videos, you know, we could market them and all that sort of stuff, but we can't be bothered because, you know, just too much work. We're busy doing other stuff. We put it out there for free. Not many people necessarily will watch it, but if they will, they'll get great value from it. So we've got a few people that are working all the way through it, and they'll get a lot from it, you know. And it is hard to get started, you know, because it's hard to get started in any sector that you don't have any knowledge in. You know, if you wanted to open a restaurant tomorrow, well, we can all probably open a can of beans, but you know, it's a little bit more than that, isn't it? You know, but I do, or don't so much now. Don't get involved. Don't do this sort of stuff very much now. But my biggest thing, whether it's people investing or trying to do it themselves, I try and talk them out of it. I seriously do, because I know very few people that are successful. Very few, and I know a lot. Of people, I mean, not a lot of stuff, you know, and but if they're really intent on doing it, they will find a way. You know, it's that doggedness, that entrepreneurness, etc., that they will find a way, and they will connect with people, and they will make themselves a nuisance sometimes and get questions answered and stuff like that. And you know, for us, when we've done things in the past, it's sort of when people, you know, so, oh, can you ask a question? Well, before I answer the question, I'll get them to do something. And if they don't come back, and they generally don't, as soon as I ask them to do something, they won't do it. So why am I going to spend 45 minutes writing something up or looking at somebody's deal when, you know, so, but those that do, you respond if you've got the time. So, you know, there is some help out there. It's just, just be you know, just sit on your credit card, I suppose, is the thing.
Looking back over your decades of experience, would you do anything differently?
I am not going.
I don't know as I would, to be fair.
To actually learn.
I think even the mistakes, I think I'd still make them. Obviously, you wouldn't if you knew all that, you wouldn't make them. But it's the mistakes that have actually brought the biggest learnings. So I think the only thing that we have sort of thought about is we probably as a family should have probably held on to some properties, but I'm still a trader and very resistant about holding on to stuff. But we do recognize now, even I recognize now, that actually holding stuff is a great exit for us. It de-risks the project. So yeah, that's something that we are already doing, which I never thought we would do. So you know, you have to, I have to listen to other people. I learn a lot from people that know a lot less than I do. You know, and just because I know stuff, don't make me right.
And what do you think next year is going to look like for us in your crystal ball?
There's no doubt in my mind that the market, the residential market is going to dip. We are structuring everything at the moment based on 10% fall in prices. And in some areas, I think it might exceed that. In other areas, it probably won't get anywhere near that. So we're going to see, as always, local fluctuations. What bothers me a little bit is most people, when they talk to me, say, yeah, our area is great and it will be fine. You know, and when we look into it, no, that's just rose tinted spectacles or whatever. So we are going to see a drop off in values, which obviously represents opportunity for some people. Maybe if people, certainly if they're losing their jobs and losing their businesses, you know, opportunities to acquire assets, if you like, motivated sellers or whatever the expression is. For us, there is the opportunity of a lot of distressed stuff, and that unfortunately will come from administrators and first charge receivers, etc., etc. They're already out there, but a lot of that stuff takes a long time to actually come to fruition and come to the market. There's stuff already on the market, but there's a lot of people who've been hoarding cash. There's a lot of cash around. So we might not get the real bargain basement buys that we've seen in previous dips, but there's still going to be a lot of opportunity for people. But there's also a lot of people, and we're not immune to it. Some of the projects that we've got on the desk, you know, will have lost significant value on paper. So we then have to make the decision whether we just hold on to them, which is probably what we end up doing, rather than sort of, you know, cracking on and not being able to refinance or whatever. But it tough times for a lot of people, but amazing opportunity for a few. You know, I think that I think it was Dad that said, or somebody else probably told him that, I can't remember the exact words, but effectively in the bad times, in the good times, loads of people make money. In the bad times, loads of people lose money, but a few people make absolute fortunes. Absolute fortunes. You know, I mean, we're involved with a private equity house at the moment in an acquisition of a construction company, and those guys have got stuff all over the place, you know, offers to buy into, etc. And those guys, you got to be careful with those sort of people. Is that, you know, that they've got the cash pots, you know, the many millions, hundreds of millions of pounds to buy anything, you know, and so, you know, they sweep up. But there's plenty of opportunity in the property sector for us smaller people, as far as I'm concerned. People with way less experience than us, with way less clout or credibility. Just be, you know, make sure that the deal works for you, and if it does, then crack on. If you've got cash, you know, cash is king is the saying, isn't it? You know, it always is. But in a recession, debt is, you know, they talk about good debt, bad debt, and there is good debt and bad debt. In these times, all debt's bad. No debt is good. Even mortgage debt, if it's above a certain flipping threshold, you know. So those that are highly geared are going to struggle. You know, they will be some of those motivated sellers, should we say? And ironically, in some circles, some of the training companies and the people involved in the training companies may well be in a position that they're acquiring assets off of people that they've trained previously. Say no more.
Karen, back to you.
No, that's absolutely brilliant, Richard. And I've put the link into your house building community. I will drop in your YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
And I'm looking at those videos, and I've actually seen it all delivered live. I was lucky enough to spend quite a lot of time with Richard and seeing a lot of that stuff delivered firsthand. But it's absolutely 100% worth working through those videos. They are phenomenal, and the value in them, despite being free, is fantastic. But no, it's been brilliant. Lots of really great comments there, Richard. Really appreciate. And we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. So with that, we'll bid everyone a rest of great morning, really, and catch up with you soon. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Richard.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.